Well, hello everyone, and welcome back. It's been quite a busy weekend actually. I've been pumping out videos in the last 24 hours or so. Excuse me. Yeah, hot on the heels of my Transform Element T03 review, I've now got this guy, which is Fans Toys FT-42 Hunk, which is their version of a Masterpiece scale Brawn. And what a great looking figure this is. Just give you a second to take him in all of his glory. I've been a fan of this character for a long time. It's one of my favourite mini-bots when I was a kid. And even though the toy was garbage, let's face it, but he has some great adventures in the UK Marvel comic. Not so much the US, but the UK stories saw him reluctantly teaming up with Ravage. In a pretty memorable arc, and he also had a really great face-off against Starscream as well. So I've always liked this guy, and I've always wanted a more toon representative version. I do own Bagcube's Brawny, which is it's a stab. It's evocative of the character. In fact, in some ways I quite like it because it's a big brutish bot, which you kind of think Brawn should be, instead of the rather sort of spindly-legged bot he was on the show. But it never really hit all the marks aesthetically. So I was really happy when Fans Toys announced this figure. It looked great in the promo pics. The early pictures that surfaced with, I guess they were last year now, weren't they? They were a long time ago. But they had metallic paint, and that looked like garbage, to be honest. I was so glad they didn't go with it in the end. The colours they did go with, well, I'll talk about that more, but yeah, I'm happy overall. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself here. I think, as usual for most of my videos, a good place to start is to give you a quick look at the packaging and the accessories, and then we'll get into talking about the figure itself. So I'll just move the little guy over there, and then we'll be back. Okay, so it's not the most imposing box of all time. It's a pretty small thing, but it lives up to the usual standard that Fans Toys set. I really like their box artwork. That's a really nice little bit of art on the front there, and their boxes are a bit more interesting than some as well. You know, you have the usual Fans Toys branding on the side there with the character name, but I also like the fact that on the back you get the character, the product shots, along with some of their other bots there. You've got their Warpath there, which I think is Sheridan, and then you have their upcoming version 2, I think. Is it their second version of Beachcomber? I'm not really that interested in Beachcomber, it has to be said. I can't remember. I think there was one called Arcos from XTB. I can't remember what this guy's even called, to be honest with you. They're upcoming, but it looks pretty sweet, so if you're a Beachcomber fan, that's one to look out for. I like the fact that they have the bios on the back there, which are written in a similar style to the original G1 bios, albeit using their own names. But yeah, I like it that it shows everything off, and there's a little bit more to talk about with the packaging and to look at than there is with the regular third-party stuff. We also get the usual Fans Toys instructions, along with the collector card in there, which I'm not going to bother to take out because, you know, we all know it's that kind of credit card material. It has the tech specs on the back, the picture on the front, and the manual just shows the bot and alt modes. He doesn't have many accessories. What we do get are the alternate face. I've already swapped the face, so this is actually the standard face, but it's this sculpt here. It's a really great sculpt, I have to say. It looks really nice on the bot, but I prefer the alternate one for reasons that I'll go into when I bring the figure in. But anyway, that's a really nice default option. Really does look great, and I love the fact they're now using those blue eyes to match the Takara ones rather than the metallic ones. I really do like the look of them. They really appeal to my sensibilities. I know that there are people who sit in the other camp, but I really like them, so I'm glad they're going that way. The other thing we get is this drill, which is from that one episode where he did that thing. It's okay as far as this sort of stuff goes. But yeah, it's something that I'll probably never use other than to show you in this video. So there we go, that's what we've got. I'll get these bits out of the way and then we'll come back and we'll take a look at the figure himself. Okay, and by the magic of video editing, we're back. Brawny's taking that place in front of the camera again. Sorry, Brawny, I just called him Brawny, didn't I? Hunk. It's a really nice looking figure. Proportionally, it's not 100% accurate to the character model, but you know, again, like I've said with a lot of figures, you have to take into consideration the limitations of these being real world things, not cartoons. They can't, you know, their physics, they can't defy physics. They have to conform to the limitations of the engineering. This does a great job. I still think it's pretty well proportioned. I mean, the animation model has a slightly wider, bigger head and bigger body and spindlier legs, but that looks pretty naff anyway, it has to be said. This I actually really like. I mean, I'd quite like it if it was a little beefier on top, but I can understand why they might not have been able to do that. But still, I think he looks really great. I'll just give you a quick 360. Here he is from the front, obviously. I've already applied a water slide for a tutorial I did earlier. Annoyed me no end that I then discovered it had a little nick in it, so there's a gap you can see the yellow through, but try not to obsess about that. I may replace it at some time. They're relatively easy to do. Give you a little side view there. You can see he's got a backpack, but the character model had a backpack. Maybe not quite this big, but it did have one. But still, the profile isn't bad. It looks pretty good. The silhouette is nice. Nowhere near as egregious as some. It actually looks like it compacts pretty well, and it suits the figure, the character. Looks okay from the back. Oh, that wheel spins. There we go. I didn't know that until just that second. And yeah, as we move around, you can see pretty much the same from that side as well. No real differences. I forgot to mention the accessories. There is a third accessory. The reason I forgot to mention it is because he's holding it, which is this little pistol he's got there. Now, what's unique about this one, actually, or I say not unique, but unique to Fans Toys as far as I know so far, is the way in which the character holds it. So normally with the Masterpiece figures, you have the tab on the side of the handle, which tabs into the Masterpiece style hands. This does not have that. It has, I don't know if that will show up, but on the back there you can see there's a little tab, and that fits into a groove on his hand just there. And it's a really nice little system. It clicks in, it's really safe and secure. That is going nowhere. I really like that. I hope they continue with that because it's much nicer than what we've had before. I hate, you know, real bugbear of mine is putting guns in characters' hands and it feeling A, like it's not going to go in without breaking, or B, it's too loose and it just falls out the second you move the character or when you knock the figure. But you can knock this, that, you know, bang, it's over, hit that, not moving, not going anywhere. So yeah, that's a really nice direction they're taking if that's the way they're going to go with future weapons. Anyway, we'll go through a quick checklist, articulation checklist as well. This is honestly where the figure falls down for my money. I say visually it looks pretty good. But actually, before we do the articulation, it's probably a good idea to talk about the aesthetics. I really like it overall. I think the colour green they went for is really nice. One thing I've seen online is a lot of people complaining he's not dark enough. Well, they seem to be referencing the character model that's doing the rounds. I think it's fan coloured, where he is a darker green, army green. But in the show, he's never that colour. He's always more of a, well, I don't know the exact green. I guess it's an olive, maybe an olive green. He's definitely more of that colour. Maybe not quite this exact shade, but definitely closer to this than the dark green that I've seen doing the rounds. So I really like that they made that choice. I also really like the sort of yellowy gold they've gone with. That's really good. Looks nice and, you know, fairly well painted on mine. There are a few spots where it's not quite as even, like in the corner there and in these gaps, but I can live with that on the whole. I've had worse painted figures that I've been relatively happy with. We also have some nice grey arms and shins, which are very toon accurate, as well as all this sort of accents down here, these colours and this black piece here, that's all very toon accurate. The face again matches the arms, which is lovely and toon accurate, and as you can see, the alternate sculpt I went for was the yelling face, which I think looks really, really good. I wanted to give him more of a warlike face because he is, you know, one of the strongest Autobots, so I wanted him to be, you know, charging into battle, yelling, "I am Brawn." The thing that I'm probably the most disappointed with overall, in robot mode anyway, is the helmet. The reason being is that I can see why Fans Toys did it, because they do usually go for these sort of metallic accents on their figures, but the helmet's not quite dark enough. In fact, it probably looks darker on camera in certain lights. With the harsh lights on it like this, you'll see it's picking up all the highlights because it's highly reflective, but that makes it look very light in certain circumstances, but in others, when it catches the light differently, you may see that it looks very dark, and that's kind of how it is in person. Depending on the light source and how you look at it, it can look very, very light or quite dark. Most of the time it looks acceptably dark, so there's enough of a differentiation between the face and the arms and the helmet, but the character model, and indeed the early proto pics that were doing the rounds, they had a darker helmet, and I would have preferred that. It's not the end of the world, but it is a little bit disappointing. But it still looks good overall, and yeah, I mean, I'm not going to nitpick too much about that. So he has the usual sort of blue windows that you're seeing now, although not the same colour windows that we're seeing. This is a different colour blue to what you're getting on the Takara masterpieces these days, but yeah, it still looks okay. And obviously he does have some visible tyres and things like that, but you know, I'm not going to moan about that. You know, could they have done something to conceal them? I don't know, but they don't look bad anyway. A lot of people joke about his camel toe down the front here, but it's, for my money, it doesn't look terrible. It looks better painted than it did in the early renders anyway. Okay, so that's the visual side over. And oh, I forgot to mention, he's got some nice gold accents under there as well, which do look quite nice. It's a little bit off model, but it does look good. But yeah, anyway, we'll go back and we'll discuss the articulation. I'm just going to get myself sorted, and then I'll be back to talk about that. Okay, and so articulation. This is probably the area where the figure falls down for my money. Well, it's not probably, it is the area the figure falls down. This figure costs more than Transform Element. I think it was £15 or more expensive than Transform Element's Mirage. It's a smaller bot. It is heftier, I'll give it that. It's actually got quite a lot of heft to it. It's quite weighty because of the die cast, and it's nicely painted, but it cannot do a lot of things that I would expect it to do in this day and age. And I'll go through what we've got. So, you know, as you'd expect, you've got a 360 on the arm. It's quite stiff. Mine is anyway. But it is there. It's a 360 swivel on the arm. As I say, mine is quite stiff. You have this much out to there. I mean, that's not too bad. That's kind of what you'd expect from most figures. Not every bot gets higher than that. You have a bicep swivel, which, yep, that's fine. That's kind of what you'd expect. And you have a wrist swivel with pinned fingers all molded together. There's no individually articulated index finger there or thumb. It's just a very old style masterpiece kind of hand there. Where this really starts to look bad, I mean, it doesn't have a butterfly joint. Again, that's not, you know, I'm not going to give it too much grief for that because a lot of figures don't, even though it is becoming more normal now. What I can't really forgive it for is only having a single jointed elbow. That's pretty poor. I mean, you can get just above 90. I mean, I'm literally just above. So you can't have him with his, pointing his gun bent up. It's pretty inexcusable on Fans Toys' part not giving him double jointed elbows. That's really quite poor. It really limits the range of motion and the sort of dynamism of the poses you can pull off. It's really quite annoying, to be honest, but I mean, it is what it is. Similarly, the legs, they're quite limited as well. You have these hip skirts here out of the box, they come mistransformed or not completely transformed. So you'll see this side skirt here is clipped into this part here. There's a little notch there and the tab that goes into it. Out of the box, those pieces are pushed. They actually clip in here. They're flaps there, and they clip into that side of the figure. But out of the box, those hinges are open to the back, and then this is pushed in. So you have to assemble that. But in doing so, you create a few problems for yourself. So it's got a decent enough spread. Like you can go like that far out, so you can get almost a full split on him there, which isn't too bad. I mean, if you want him doing that. But where he falls down, literally, as you just saw, is he can only kick that far, which is pretty bad before he hits the hip skirts. Now you can get around that, as I said. If you unclip that, then the hip skirt will move. But that looks pretty ugly, and having to untab something to get more articulation, especially now that we're getting things like Masterpiece Bumblebee and Masterpiece Prime with those hip skirts that tuck in automatically. Even older style hip skirts on figures don't require you to untab something for the most part. So yeah, that's not great. I mean, when you do that, you get 90, which is okay, and the knee you get just over 90 on, but again, not double jointed. So although it's passable, it's nothing special, is it? It's just very, very much the bare minimum you'd expect from a figure. It's a little disappointing, I have to say. Fans Toys are often lauded as the best by some people, and I do like that he can support his own weight like that on one leg because he's quite hefty. Anyway. Yeah, Fans Toys are often lauded as the best, and everyone else should bow down to them. But to be perfectly honest with you, that is not acceptable. Really, I'm not at all pleased with how limited his articulation is when it comes to knees and elbow joints. Another thing that's really bad, and actually probably the worst aspect, is the articulation down here. So ankle. He has an ankle rocker, but it literally, that's your lot. You get that much. So if you do that, you get enough to do an A stance, but not even a particularly wide A stance, because that's as far as it can go. So if you want to get a deep A stance or wide A stance, it looks stupid. So you can literally get that much before it starts to look silly. There is no toe tilt. No ankle tilt, not ankle tilt. Obviously there's ankle tilt there, but there's no up and down movement on the ankle. There's no rocker there, so you can't get anything. So there's no possibility of you kind of getting the more dynamic poses out of this figure that you would get with something like T's Mirage, for example. It's just not possible. I mean, you can put him in a half decent looking pose, I guess, like this, but the limitations are there, aren't they? It's really annoying because Fans Toys can do better. They're getting pretty sloppy lately. I have to say, quite lazy. I think they're resting on their laurels. A lot of their designs, they've not gone back and re-engineered them. I mean, although this isn't even really an old design, something like their hoodlum, their hot rod, that was an old design, and it showed. It was pretty poor when it came out. You didn't even have the ability to look up. But this this is a newer design, so I'm left wondering why they didn't incorporate some very basic stuff. A couple of things I forgot to mention, actually, just because I was so focused on the negatives. He does have a waist rotation. At first, I didn't think he did. Well, actually, that's incorrect. I knew he did because I'd heard that he did, and I'd seen pictures of it, but mine wouldn't turn. It was incredibly stiff, and it's because the paint on this guy, it's quite thick, and the tolerances are such that with the added paint, it makes it harder to turn. So I got it, anyway, I got it turning that way. That's no problem, although again, not very far. That's about as far as you can get it. It wouldn't go back the other way, and I couldn't figure out why, until you'll see why. There's a semicircle type scratch underneath the paint now, which is really annoying. That was caused by the pin underneath not being pushed all the way in, and then it had obviously dried on that paint, on that pin, and that was what was making it so stiff. So when I eventually did force it, it just scraped all the paint off of the underside of the figure. Okay, not the worst place it could be, but pretty poor QC from QC number 34 there, as if that's a real person. Yeah, I mean, again, could be worse. You don't really see it unless you're looking at the underside of the figure from there, but it is annoying that, this is quite an expensive collector's item, and I've now got flaking paint or missing paint on it. You don't see it if I'm doing that, but again, I know it's there as well, so it bugs me all the more. And it's just literally where that pin wasn't pushed in enough by whoever assembled it, and then they painted over it and it stuck and caused damage. So that's irritating. You can get more out of it if you take the backpack off or pull the backpack out. I think that gives you a bit more room to move around, but it looks bloody stupid, so you're not going to be doing that, are you? And it's all floppy once you take it off the pegs, so that's the last thing you're going to want to do for any kind of posing, because it will just look silly. So let's put that all back together. And yeah, the last thing that I forgot to mention is the head rotation. This back piece here will rotate, although again is limited by this, but it does rotate a little bit. And the head itself rotates, so you get that much around that way. There was a little groove there which it has a tendency to get stuck in, which is annoying. I think I just got it stuck in the groove. Yes, I did. Oh god, this is going to be a pain to get out now. This happened the other day, and it was like, well, yesterday. And yeah, it was not easy to get the head out. I think I may, if you just excuse me for a second, I may need to bring in some spudging assistance here to move that round. The head also will look up, which is quite good. You don't get much down, but you know the up looks good. The up is good. You get a tiny bit down, but very, very little. Like his chin hits there. Anyway, I've freed it up now. So, but that's another design issue. The head gets stuck in there from time to time. But the fact that you can turn it quite a long way around, and then you can then turn the back piece to give it even more. It does add that little bit extra, but again, nothing. It's not the most articulated head ever, and it doesn't look sort of side to side or anything like that, so you're quite limited. Oh, one other thing, actually, sorry, I completely forgot to mention it. This isn't really, I don't think it's meant to be part of the articulation. Oh no, my dry rub's come off now. I think I'm going to have to redo that. Brilliant. Oh well. Sorry, my water slide. Anyway, I am going to, I forgot to mention that because of transformation, this piece moves, so you do get a little bit more movement on the arm, so you can almost put this, fight the power. But yeah, that's about your lot for articulation. So all things considered, it's pretty disappointing. I think it's pretty disappointing. You know, this is 2020. This is not a particularly impressive bot when it comes to articulation, especially given the price point. Fans Toys are getting a bit lazy. You know, this could come back to bite them on the arse if they're not careful. Oh yeah, and sorry, I can't remember if I mentioned that obviously he does have a little bit of rotation there at the top of the thigh. No mid-knee. But yeah, so I'm of the opinion that they could do better. They should be doing better. They're, you know, supposedly the leaders in third-party figures. I don't know, if they carry on this way, they're going to be toppled by others. You know, there are certainly better figures at this price point from others, maybe not as prolific companies, but certainly, you know, X-Transbots are making some good stuff these days, and one-offs from other companies are also really good now, like Transform Element, for example. So I'd advise Fans Toys to be careful, not to, you know, just take it for granted that they can cash the checks without putting any effort in. Anyway, just give me a second and I will bring in a little comparison piece here. We have Bad Cube's Brawny, which, yeah, it's... I mean, it filled a space on the shelf, which was empty, until a better one came around, and that's pretty much all I can say. I did like it when I got it. I mean, I think this cost me 90 quid actually, because it was second hand and, you know, you couldn't get it for love nor money, so I ended up paying a premium, you know, a late tax. But God, you know, I'm complaining about this being 75. This was 90. But yeah, this is not a great looking figure, is it, compared to that? It's quite lightweight. The proportions are even less correct. It doesn't really look anything like the character. You know, when you actually put it side by side, it's got a huge backpack. It's got the terrible Bad Cube legs and feet. Yeah, this is superior in every way, I have to say, apart from perhaps articulation, ironically, because this has greater range there. It has greater range in the elbows. It has about the same, if not greater, range in the knees. You have more articulation in the toe and ankle. You have more waist, more head. Yeah, so essentially the articulation on this piece of crap, that's not fair. It's not a piece of crap. It's just aesthetically it's not as good as that. But the articulation on this thing is a damn sight better on this. This is a pretty old figure now. There's no excuse for it at all. Really disappointing, actually. But anyway, don't want to labour the point. Other reviewers have gone into it. You know, they've covered it as well. I think it's a shame. I kind of agree that this is a real missed opportunity to deliver the definitive figure, because someone else could now come out with a better articulated figure and this will be redundant. But yeah, anyway, it is a shame, but I've gone on about that enough. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get this guy transformed up, and this guy actually, and we'll come back with a comparison of vehicle modes and an in-depth look at his vehicle mode. I'm not going to do that on camera. I tried that with my Mirage review yesterday. It didn't go well. It took me a long time to do, and I'm just not comfortable doing a lot of transformations on camera, especially the first time. But I do at least have instructions for this guy that I can look at while I'm doing it. So it hopefully shouldn't take me as long or be as hellish as their T Mirage was. So yeah, bear with me for a second. It obviously will be just a second or two for you guys, and I will be back as soon as possible. Okay, so we're back now with a look at the alt mode. Actually wasn't that bad of a transformation, bar 1 point actually. But yeah, I mean, it's a Jeep. Brawn is, I believe, according to various published sources, modelled on the Suzuki Jimny, not a Land Rover, although he does look quite a lot like a Land Rover. more so than he does the Suzuki. It's not a terrible looking alt mode. When you actually look at the character model, it's reasonably close, or at least a reasonably close approximation. There are some discrepancies, as there always are with these things. These bits here, the doors are not accurate, but they give the impression. The headlights, I mean, once you see the front of this, that it looks like a Thomas the Tank Engine type face, you can't unsee it. And that's one of my real sort of negative nitpicks about the alt mode. Is I don't know why they went with these silly headlights. They should have just done what they did in the early promo shots, which was have blue translucent headlights like most Masterpiece cars. They were lighter blue and the windows were lighter blue. That's what it should have been. Don't know why they changed the blues and went for clear windows there. They look silly. If they weren't there, it wouldn't look as bad, but as it is, they look very, very silly indeed. Yeah, so there's that. Otherwise the aesthetics aren't bad. I mean, it has rubber tyres. It doesn't look bad from any angle, to be honest. It's not great, but it's not terrible. One thing that there are a couple of like transformation steps that are a little bit sort of finicky, where you have to flip a few bits and pieces that feel like they're going to break. The main one being the legs. You have to push the legs backwards off the hips, and they do feel like they're going to break. I think the trick I found was to sort of wiggle them side by side or side to side, and that did it, rather than trying to push both at once. That made them slip back easier. You have to take a lot of little intricate bits and pieces apart and fold them out and do that, so just be careful when you're doing it. There are pushing the cockpit down, you need to make sure it clears some of the inner pieces. There was a notorious Bobby Skullface video in which he just crunched it down, and I don't know. I mean, I did it very carefully and I could still hear something rattling there. I hope to God that's not something that's broken, because I will be very upset, because I did go very careful with this transformation. So I do hope it's not another Fans Toys clusterfuck. Anyway, there is a QC issue which has been fairly well documented so far, and that is this underpiece here. Now, this flap is supposed to, I don't know how well you can see it, but there are little grooves here, and this flap is supposed to go around down into those grooves and then tab in so that it doesn't move. The problem is that it doesn't like to go far enough, so it tabs in. So what happens is it just springs back up. These pieces tab in here and here, and that doesn't leave enough clearance for this piece to rotate and go down and then clip into the tabs. There's not enough tension there to do it, so it just springs. The best I've been able to do, as you saw earlier, was to get it down and then get half of it in. When you do it, see that separates, and then you can't crunch it back in because that thing's in the way, so you remove that, then you get that back in, and then you end up with the same problem where that won't go. You can kind of fudge it a bit, as long as it's, I mean, look, that's done, so it will roll, but it's not clipped in, and it will keep hitting it, so that's pretty poor. I've seen people online trimming bits of plastic to allow that to rotate, but you really shouldn't have to. And again, how the hell was that missed before they released the figure? I mean, that's a design flaw. So that just adds to the articulation woes, really, for me. Sort of takes the shine off the guy even more. Again, makes a mockery of these effing QC stickers they slap on everything. So many of their figures do have QC issues, and design flaws. It's a bit of a joke even having those things on there. I mean, I'm not that bothered because I don't really have my figures in alt mode, but I can see why it would be a pain to someone who likes to transform back and forth on a fairly regular basis. And also, you're paying good money for these things. They shouldn't be like this. Here's that thing from that one episode, which I believe just clips onto the front there. I don't really want to do it because I don't want to scratch the paint on my figure, but yeah, I believe it just goes on the front, so I'm not going to push it all the way on. and then it's just a drill bit that goes on the front there. Yeah, meh, that holds zero value or interest for me, so that can just go. Yeah, so not the worst Fans Toys transformation by any stretch of imagination. Not what I'd call fun though. Again, it was more like a kind of butt clenching, am I going to break it? Have I broken it? I won't know until I go back to robot mode, whether that is just something flopping up and down inside on a slider, or whether I have actually broken something off. It feels like there's something loose in there, which isn't great. I don't know what it is. I have a feeling something's broken. I'm going to be really annoyed. Yeah, there we go. Anyway, let's just bring in Bad Cube's Brawny for a comparison. Here he is. His alt mode is far less accurate to the tune, even less accurate than this. It looks okay. I mean, he feels very plasticky by comparison anyway. Again, he'll go on my alt mode shelf now. I won't worry about him anymore. He really is starting to look his age now. But I will say one thing, the transformation was a hell of a lot less stressful. I didn't feel like I was going to break anything. It was a lot easier. And yeah, nothing, it's all pegged together pretty well. Nothing's bulging, nothing's preventing it from rolling. Whereas this is, I mean, the figure rattles, but that's just the wheels. That's something I hope is not broken, but could well be. This is, yeah, I mean, well, every measure, this is a better figure, except the one measure that I think is often overlooked, and that's the fun factor. This is not fun. This is. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not somebody who plays with my figures a lot. Like I said, I'm not like pew pew, whatever. I just like to look at them, and they're nostalgia pieces. They remind me of being a kid, and they are now accurate versions of the characters I loved instead of the toys which were not accurate. But I'm not excusing companies for the kind of crap they're pulling, where these things are just, expensive and not fit for purpose because of design faults or design faults or flaws in QC. And it says a lot that a figure like this that's years old is better from a playability factor. Anyway, let's get him out of the way. Give you one last look at him before we move on to final thoughts. I'm not hugely impressed with the alt mode. I don't think I'll ever put it in again. I just, as I say, I hope to God that something didn't break. I'm hoping it is just a piece that's loose on the sliding mechanism. But yeah, I don't know. I've not heard it make this noise in anyone else's review. So if something has come off, I hope it's something I can clip back on fairly easy. But we shall see. Anyway, underneath, like, I haven't done that. I know, really giving you a very good look, but it does clean up quite nicely. But yeah, that panel there is a mess. Oh, I should probably point out as well that there is a little hole there for weapon storage, so you can, should you so desire, you can tab his gun in there, I believe, and then that just stores under there like that. But it's even more of a hazard to, there you go. Anyway, yeah, give me a little bit of time to get them transformed back up, hold my breath, and I'll be back with some final thoughts. Okay, so we're back in robot mode now for some final thoughts. And what I didn't do earlier, I realised that I did bring Brawny in for a comparison, obviously, but I didn't bring anyone else in. So I'm just quickly going to bring in my standard comparison piece, because I think he's a good one, and that is T's Prime. I again will have to just quickly adjust the camera for the height discrepancy, because he's a big old boy and he's not wanting to stand up today for some reason. But yeah, let's just do a quick adjustment on the height. I think he looks pretty good side by side. Brawn is scaled well. I think that's about the right there. It's about the right scale. I think they got the height pretty spot on, actually, and he looks the piece, or looks the part. Sorry. Again, I've said aesthetically, I've got no issues with this guy. I think he's great in robot mode. Not quite as good in alt mode, obviously, but he is a really nice piece for shelf display. So that's what I'm going to do. He's going to go on my shelf, and he'll be posed as well as I can, and he'll look great, and he'll certainly look a damn sight better than Brawny. Yeah, I think Fans Toys, again, they're getting complacent. It doesn't have enough articulation. I'm not sure it's worth the money. I think they're guilty of artificially inflating prices at the moment. You know, they're doing. I appreciate there's a lot going on in the world, and production runs are possibly smaller than they might have been in the past. But we're seeing other companies being able to meet demand, or at least, even if they're not, they're delaying things and not charging an arm and a leg. I mean, that T Mirage is better than this, and it was cheaper, and it's just really hard to comprehend how Fans Toys can think it's acceptable to put out a figure like that in 2020 with such limited articulation. Yeah, you know, I'm seeing the aftermarket prices for their figures go through the roof now as well. It's if you don't pre-order a Fans Toys figure now, sight unseen, you have no chance of getting it. So you're at the stage now where you have to order stuff that could potentially be, you know, subpar, or face paying a late tax on it, which is rubbish. You know, you haven't even got time to wait for reviews now, because by the time you've read a review or watched a review, you'll be paying double. You know, I've seen some stupid prices for Fans Toys stuff lately, and quite honestly, the people who pay those prices are idiotic, because they're just driving things up and making things worse. And Fans Toys, I believe, have cottoned onto it and are doing it, whether subconsciously or consciously. They're driving it by releasing small production runs, limited repaints, etc., etc. Yeah, it's no longer the case that you could wait to see how a figure was when one of the main reviewers got it, because they get a preview copy. They don't even get that now. So, you know, if you like the look of a render, you've just got to hope that a figure comes out, has decent articulation when it arrives, and doesn't have any major QC issues. If it does, you've wasted your money. Although, have you? Because there's going to be some Fans Toys mug out there who will pay you double the asking price for it. So I don't know. Maybe I'm the idiot not buying more of these and selling them on. Anyway, my sort of anti-Fans Toys business practice rant aside, I still like Hunk. I think he's a really nice looking little figure. Yeah, I think build wise he's really good. He's well put together. Aesthetically, I think he's really nice. It's just the limitations of the articulation really drag him down for me. But still, he will look good on my shelf, which is what I've said before in this video, and that's really, you know, I'm not much of a sort of a fiddler with my figures. That they're posed and displayed, and they, you know, I look at them and go, oh, aren't they pretty? And that's what I'll do with this guy once I fix this damn faction symbol. God. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this quick look at the figure. I appreciate it's probably not as in-depth as some of my other reviews, but that may be a good thing because they do tend to drag on. But I've done so much reviewing and editing this weekend. I just wanted to get this over and done with, really, is the honesty. I don't really know what's next on the horizon. I think there are a few things that I'm waiting for, X-Transbots wise. I've seen that they're releasing a new version of Elagos, and I've already got like 3 Cyclonus figures, but I would go for a nicer painted Elagos. I don't like their Andras repaint though. The colours are all wrong. But yeah, I'm waiting for that maybe. But also there's a couple of other things that I'm waiting on from third parties. I quite like some of the Quintessons. They're looking all right. I'm still waiting on Make Toys, Mackay Toys, however you say it, to release their 2 remaining cone heads, but apparently they're still alive, but they're just being very slow at releasing. But apparently the downbeat repaints due or has come out. I don't know. So there are things on the horizon. I don't have anything ordered at the moment, so I might not be producing another video for some time. But as always, thanks for watching, and I'm sort of well over 200 subscribers now, which is insane for me to think, actually, because, you know, I don't do this for any kind of monetary gain. I just do it for fun. and I appreciate I'm not the most polished reviewer out there, so obviously a few people enjoying what I'm doing, which is great. You know, I like that I can be part of the community, enjoy listening to what you guys have to say and think about the figures. So as I've said, always feel free to leave comments and I'll do my best to answer any questions. So until next time, it only remains for me to say thanks for tuning in yet again, and take care everyone, and I'll catch you next time.